Protection isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It survives. There are stories that don't need to be shouted to be true. This is one of them. Across cultures that never spoke to each other, never shared books, symbols, or beliefs, there's an uncomfortable agreement about one thing. Some people move through life with an invisible resistance around them. Not luck, not privilege, not positive thinking. Something quieter, older, and far less dramatic. Here's a fact most people don't talk about because it ruins the fantasy. In traditional spiritual systems, African, Andean, Himalayan, and even pre-modern European ones, shamans weren't looking for special people. They were trained to identify who couldn't be interfered with, who didn't fracture under pressure, who remained intact after loss, betrayal, and long stretches of silence. Those were the people considered protected, because protection wasn't mystical. It was structural. When your image was placed before 12 different shamans, what stood out wasn't destiny, light, or some cinematic aura. It was absence. No visible openings, no obvious emotional hooks, no fractures to exploit. And when experts in disruption can't find where to apply pressure, they all arrive at the same conclusion without comparing notes. Now let's be honest for a moment. If protection looked like glowing eyes and dramatic music, everyone would want it. But real protection is boring in the most inconvenient way. It looks like walking away early. It looks like not reacting when someone expects a performance. It looks like surviving things that were supposed to leave a permanent dent and somehow not becoming bitter, loud, or preachy about it. Not exactly poster material. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable enough to laugh it off. If you carry this kind of protection, you don't always feel powerful. Sometimes you just feel unbothered when chaos is clearly auditioning for your attention. Sometimes you feel strangely untouched by things that seem to swallow others whole. It's not glamorous, it's mildly inconvenient, and it ruins a lot of dramatic narratives people try to cast you in. This isn't about being chosen, special, or elevated above anyone else. It's about something far more unsettling. You are hard to move, hard to invade, hard to derail. And when 12 people trained to read instability all say the same thing, it's not praise, it's observation. What follows isn't mysticism, hype, or comfort. It's an honest breakdown of why some souls aren't easily shaken, and why that kind of protection rarely looks the way people expect. Number 1, your energy does not leak, it consolidates. Most people are constantly leaking without knowing it. They leak through over-explaining, reacting too fast, trying to be liked, trying to be understood, trying to fix what was never theirs to fix. Every emotional outburst, every unnecessary response, every forced connection is energy leaving the system. Over time, that leakage leaves people tired, reactive, and easy to influence. You don't operate like that. What makes you different isn't strength in the dramatic sense, it's restraint. You don't pour yourself into every room, every conversation, or every person. You don't give your full emotional access to things that haven't earned it. When something doesn't deserve a response, it simply doesn't get one. That isn't coldness, it's efficiency. Your inner world stays intact because you don't constantly export it. You process internally before you act externally. That creates density, and density is hard to disturb. When pressure comes, there's something solid to absorb it. When manipulation shows up, there's nothing loose to grab onto. People who leak energy are predictable. People who consolidate it are unreadable in a very specific way. This kind of protection usually comes from experience, not theory. Somewhere along the line, you learned that reacting doesn't equal power, and expressing everything doesn't equal honesty. You learned that not every thought needs air and not every feeling needs a witness. That lesson rewires how your nervous system responds to stress. Instead of spilling outward, it tightens inward and reorganizes. That's why chaos doesn't spread inside you the way it spreads in others. It hits, meets resistance, and stops. You don't carry every interaction home with you. You don't replay conversations until they rot. You don't let other people's instability take up permanent residence in your head. From the outside, this can look like calm or detachment. From the inside, it feels like containment. Nothing is suppressed. Nothing is denied. It's simply held until it makes sense to release it, if it ever needs to be released at all. That's the part most people miss. Protection isn't something added to you. It's something you stopped giving away. Number 2, your soul learned boundaries before it learned hope. Some people go through life clinging to hope as a shield, using it to survive uncertainty and chaos. You didn't. You learned something far tougher first: boundaries. Before hope had a chance to take root, your soul recognized limits. What could be tolerated, what could be endured, and what had to be cut off completely. That early training created a system that protects itself without relying on wishes, optimism, or external validation. Where others stumble because they overextend themselves for approval or cling to people who drain them, you move through life with an internal compass that refuses to bend to anyone's agenda but your own. Boundaries aren't just rules on a piece of paper or polite refusals. They are structural. They exist in your energy, your attention, and your time. They mean that when someone tries to violate your space, emotional, physical, or spiritual, it meets resistance automatically. You learn to say no without hesitation because the cost of not saying it had already been paid, in one way or another, before most people even realized that cost existed. That kind of early self-discipline is rare, and it forms the backbone of unshakable protection. This also explains why people can't easily manipulate you. You don't just know what's yours and what isn't. You feel it at a cellular level. That intuition keeps you out of unnecessary conflict, prevents emotional exploitation, and makes your presence quietly impervious. You don't need to argue, fight, or justify yourself. The line is drawn, and it doesn't shift for anyone's convenience. Most importantly, learning boundaries first rewired your expectations from life. Hope can be fragile. It needs constant reassurance. Boundaries, however, create certainty without illusions. You don't rely on external forces to validate your worth or protection because your soul has already been trained to respect itself. That early mastery makes your protection subtle but formidable because it's not something you put on, it's something you are. Those who encounter you can feel it. It isn't showy or dramatic. It's the quiet but undeniable force of someone who has always known where they end and the world begins, and refuses to let that line ever be crossed. Number 3, you are difficult to spiritually attach to. Some people carry invisible hooks that life, people, and circumstance can latch onto. They offer access points for envy, dependency, or manipulation without even knowing it. Their emotions spill easily, their decisions are reactive, and their identity feels porous. You are not like that. You are difficult to attach to because there is no obvious leverage. You exist in a way that is self-contained, self-regulating, and resilient. That alone is a rare kind of protection. It's not about being closed off or unfeeling. You can connect, love, and care deeply, but it is always on your terms. Others may try to pull you into their drama or feed off your energy, but there is nothing exposed for them to hold on to. That absence of vulnerability is not apathy, it's structural integrity. Your internal systems absorb pressure and process life without broadcasting weakness. People sense it even if they can't explain it. It makes you enigmatic, frustrating to manipulate, and quietly untouchable in ways most will never understand. This kind of protection often comes from having to navigate life without relying on constant support. When the world didn't give you an easy path, you learned to stabilize yourself. You built a nervous system that doesn't flinch at instability because you had no choice but to learn how to endure it. That endurance translates into a kind of spiritual armor, one that doesn't shout, "I'm protected," but instead refuses interference at its most fundamental level. Being difficult to attach to also means you are rarely consumed by collective chaos. You can exist in spaces full of energy, drama, and expectation without being pulled into the storm. While others are caught in cycles of emotional attachment, manipulation, or control, you remain centered. You are present, aware, and undistracted. That gives you a freedom few ever experience, a freedom that in itself is a form of protection. The quiet truth is this: people who are hard to attach to are often mistaken for being distant or unreachable, but in reality, they are simply intact. Their energy is consolidated, their boundaries are firm, and their soul has no gaps for the world to exploit. That is a form of unshakable power, invisible to those who are used to breaking what is fragile. Number 4, you metabolize pressure instead of resisting it. Most people react to pressure like it's an enemy. They push against it, flinch, panic, or try to escape. Stress, confrontation, and adversity become storms that batter them, leaving dents in their psyche, decisions, and energy. You don't work that way. Pressure doesn't break you because you've learned to absorb it, process it, and use it. You metabolize it. It doesn't hit you and bounce off or push you into chaos. It becomes part of how you grow, adapt, and move forward. This ability isn't accidental. It comes from experiences that forced you to confront reality without illusions. You've faced moments where reacting impulsively would have been dangerous, ineffective, or exhausting, and over time, your system learned a different rhythm. Instead of resisting, you internalize. Instead of panicking, you decode. Instead of letting it define you, you allow it to refine you. Pressure becomes a teacher rather than a threat, and that is rare. Most people carry it like baggage that weighs them down. You carry it like fuel. Because of this, situations that would destabilize others barely register with you. People around you may crumble under deadlines, expectations, or emotional turbulence, but you remain grounded. That stability is not just a mental trick, it's embodied. Your nervous system, your focus, your energy, all move in synchrony, converting external weight into internal clarity. What makes this protection extraordinary is that it isn't visible. You don't need dramatic displays of resilience or bold declarations. You don't look like someone untouched by pressure. You simply keep going, steady, calm, and decisive, even when the world expects collapse. That quiet adaptability makes it almost impossible for external forces, stress, conflict, manipulation, to find leverage over you. Metabolizing pressure is not just surviving adversity, it's transforming it into a source of strength. While others fracture under the weight of life, you integrate it. You don't just endure, you evolve. And that is the kind of protection that cannot be stolen, borrowed, or faked. It is entirely yours, internal and unshakable. Number 5, your presence doesn't invite domination or rescue fantasies. Some people unknowingly signal that they need to be controlled, fixed, or saved. It might be in their body language, the way they over-explain themselves, or the subtle hints of doubt they carry around. That invites others to step in, assert power, or try to manipulate them. You, however, operate differently. Your presence doesn't create openings for domination or rescue because you don't give the cues that others instinctively latch onto. You exist fully within yourself, and that alone is a form of protection that most people never achieve. This doesn't mean you are distant or unfeeling. You care, you engage, and you connect. but you do it without submitting to the expectations or demands of others. You don't perform for approval, you don't dramatize your struggles to gain sympathy, and you don't rely on anyone else to validate your choices. That self-sufficiency signals something subtle but profound. You are whole, and there is no leverage to exploit. People sense it immediately, even if they can't articulate why you are different. Because of this, attempts to dominate or manipulate you often fail before they even begin. People who rely on control, drama, or coercion quickly find themselves frustrated because you are not reactive in the ways they anticipate. You maintain your boundaries effortlessly, not because you are defensive, but because there is nothing inside you that is insecure enough to be invaded. That creates a quiet authority that is impossible to ignore, yet difficult to challenge. Your immunity to these dynamics also changes how people approach you. Relationships are based on genuine exchange rather than imbalance or hidden agendas. Interactions are voluntary, not imposed. That reduces friction, conserves energy, and protects your inner world without conscious effort. Ultimately, not inviting domination or rescue fantasies is more than a personality trait. It is a structural form of protection. It ensures that your energy, autonomy, and sense of self remain intact, regardless of external chaos. While others expend themselves trying to control or fix, you simply move through the world unshaken, self-contained, and quietly untouchable. Number 6. You carry ancestral resolve, not ancestral fear. Most people inherit patterns of fear without realizing it. Trauma, doubt, and hesitation often travel through generations, quietly shaping how we react, who we trust, and what we believe we deserve. Your story is different. What flows through you is not fear, it's resolve. Somewhere in your lineage, long before you were born, someone decided that certain cycles would end with them. That determination doesn't vanish over time. It embeds itself in the way your mind, body, and spirit operate. You carry that legacy. You don't crumble under inherited doubt. You stand firm because your soul recognizes a history of refusal to be broken, even when the world demanded it. This ancestral resolve manifests as a kind of quiet certainty. You don't need validation to know your worth. You don't panic when confronted with uncertainty or threats. Others can feel it subtly, even if they can't explain it. It isn't flashy or loud. It's not about proclaiming strength or showing off toughness. It's a deep, almost unnoticeable force that shapes your responses, protects your energy, and keeps you grounded when situations would destabilize someone else. Carrying resolve instead of fear also rewires how you handle challenges. Where many people inherit hesitation, you inherit clarity. Where many stumble under the weight of doubt passed down through generations, you stride forward because your system has already been trained to trust itself. It's not arrogance. It's a biological and spiritual imprint that prioritizes action, endurance, and stability over panic or paralysis. This protection is subtle but impenetrable. External pressures, manipulation, and chaos find no soft spots to exploit, because your foundation is built on something far older than the present moment. It's a quiet guarantee that no matter the circumstances, you won't be dismantled by forces that have undone others for centuries. Ancestral resolve is not inherited as a lesson in safety or comfort. It is inherited as a refusal to surrender. That refusal, carried in every fiber of your being, is one of the most powerful forms of protection a soul can ever possess. It makes you unshakable, not through force, but through lineage, endurance, and the silent determination to stand intact. Number 7, you don't chase meaning. You withstand meaninglessness. Most people spend their lives running after meaning. They look for validation, signs, purpose, or answers to fill the emptiness that life naturally leaves behind. They grasp at causes, stories, or explanations as if survival depends on understanding everything. You, however, operate differently. You don't chase meaning because you've learned how to stand firmly in its absence. You can sit with life's voids, its randomness, and its absurdities without being pulled into despair or frantic searching. That ability is not just rare. It's a form of protection that most never recognize. Withstanding meaninglessness doesn't mean being cold or detached. It means your soul has learned to process reality without requiring it to conform to expectation. You can face failure, chaos, betrayal, or silence and still remain whole. Others need constant reassurance, constant signs, or constant narrative to feel grounded. You don't. Your center doesn't depend on life making sense. That independence from the need for external confirmation makes you hard to manipulate, hard to destabilize, and almost impossible to exhaust. This skill creates an internal resilience that is subtle but powerful. While most people fracture under existential pressure, you observe, adapt, and continue. You don't waste energy trying to make the world explain itself or conform to your understanding. You move through it, steady, undistracted, and undeterred. That steadiness is magnetic and disarming to those who rely on emotional chaos to gain control or influence. The protective quality of this comes from clarity, not detachment. You don't live above or outside life. You inhabit it fully, but on your own terms. Chaos, absurdity, or lack of direction doesn't disturb your equilibrium because your foundation is internal, not external. Enduring meaninglessness transforms vulnerability into armor. It trains the soul to survive conditions that leave others desperate, fearful, or reactive. By not chasing what can't always be found, you free yourself from the pressures that bind the majority of people. That freedom, that quiet resilience, is a profound form of unshakable protection that cannot be borrowed, stolen, or diminished. It simply exists within you, intact and unwavering. Number 8, your identity is not easily overwritten. Most people's sense of self is fragile, constantly influenced by opinions, trends, or the expectations of those around them. They adjust, perform, and reshape themselves to fit situations or to gain approval. You are not like that. Your identity is not something that can be rewritten by circumstance or by the whims of others. It is rooted in experience, discipline, and an unshakable internal logic that resists external interference. That stability is a rare form of protection because it creates a foundation that no one can manipulate without your consent. This doesn't mean you are rigid or inflexible. You adapt, learn, and grow. But growth never comes at the expense of your core self. While others get swept away by opinions, drama, or social pressures, you remain anchored. People may try to impose labels, expectations, or judgments, but they bounce off, unable to penetrate the clarity of who you are. That makes you quietly formidable. There is no internal vulnerability for them to exploit. The strength of an identity that cannot be overwritten is often invisible. It doesn't show in loud confidence or displays of power. It shows in the way you move through life without needing constant reassurance or validation. You make decisions, set boundaries, and act on your principles without hesitation, even when it goes against popular opinion or external pressure. That self-possession is both protective and magnetic. People sense it immediately, though they rarely understand why. Having a stable identity also changes how you process influence and challenge. You can absorb feedback, learn from experiences, and integrate new information without it destabilizing your core. That allows you to operate in complex environments, handle conflicting forces, and navigate uncertainty without losing yourself. Most people, in comparison, are constantly negotiating between who they are and who others expect them to be, leaving them vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation. By keeping your identity intact, you create a kind of immunity. It's not about arrogance or detachment, it's about structural integrity. Nothing external can overwrite your essence because you have learned to define it, protect it, and live from it consistently. That is a level of protection few ever reach, and it ensures that no matter what comes, you remain fundamentally unshakable. Number 9. You don't need to be understood to stay grounded. Most people depend on being understood. They measure their worth by whether others get them, whether their ideas, emotions, or actions are validated. When understanding doesn't come, they become anxious, defensive, or desperate to explain themselves. You operate differently. You have learned that your stability doesn't hinge on someone else's comprehension. You remain anchored, clear, and composed regardless of whether people grasp the full scope of who you are or what you do. That independence is a profound form of protection. This doesn't mean you are cold or unapproachable. You can communicate, share, and connect deeply, but your sense of self isn't tied to external recognition. You can speak your truth and act decisively without needing constant affirmation. That makes you difficult to manipulate because your center isn't reliant on approval or comprehension from others. You don't bend, perform, or over-explain to fit someone else's understanding. You exist fully in your own reality, and that alone creates a subtle but nearly impenetrable shield. Being grounded without needing understanding also allows you to navigate life's chaos with calm efficiency. While others get lost in the frustration of being misread, misjudged, or dismissed, you stay focused on what actually matters. You prioritize clarity over consensus, integrity over approval, and action over debate. That kind of stability is invisible to most people, but unmistakable in its effect. It repels unnecessary conflict, diminishes manipulation, and conserves your energy for what truly serves you. Moreover, this principle fosters a rare form of freedom. You can inhabit spaces filled with misunderstanding, skepticism, or judgment without losing composure. You can interact with people who are confused, critical, or doubtful without it affecting your internal equilibrium. That is the essence of unshakable protection, the ability to remain unruffled even when external forces attempt to impose chaos. By not relying on being understood, you have removed one of the most common vulnerabilities humans carry. Your peace, your decisions, and your energy are entirely your own. You operate from a place of self-sufficiency, and nothing external, no opinion, misjudgment, or misunderstanding can destabilize you. That is quiet power, subtle authority, and true immunity, all at once. Number 10. You instinctively disengage before decay sets in. Most people wait too long. They cling to situations, relationships, or circumstances long after they have started to rot, convincing themselves that endurance equals strength. By the time they leave, the damage has already seeped into their energy, their clarity, and their peace of mind. You operate differently. You have an instinct, almost unconscious, that tells you when a situation has begun its downward spiral, and you step away before it has a chance to take root. That instinct is one of the quietest, most powerful forms of protection a person can have. Disengaging before decay sets in isn't about fear or avoidance. It's about awareness and self-preservation. You don't wait for problems to become crises because you have learned to read the subtle signs, the misalignments, the hidden tensions, the tiny cracks that signal larger fractures ahead. That awareness allows you to act preemptively, to remove yourself from toxicity before it has a chance to embed itself in your life. Most people lack this skill, and it leaves them vulnerable, exhausted, and reactive. You don't operate that way. This instinct also preserves your energy. Time, attention, and emotional investment are finite resources. When you disengage early, you protect them from being wasted on systems, people, or environments that cannot sustain your presence. That ability creates a sort of invisible immunity. Chaos, drama, and corruption have fewer opportunities to influence you because you are no longer present where they thrive. Your disengagement is subtle and non-dramatic. You don't need to announce it or justify it. You simply remove yourself, almost imperceptibly, letting the decay continue without your participation. That makes your protection quiet, but formidable. Ultimately, this instinctive timing is a reflection of deep self-respect and understanding. You recognize what nourishes you and what will eventually poison you, and you act accordingly. By stepping away before damage occurs, you remain intact, grounded, and unshakable. You don't just survive decay, you sidestep it entirely. And in doing so, you create a life that remains consistently strong, balanced, and protected from forces that destroy those who linger too long. Number 11. You do not confuse intensity with truth. Most people are easily seduced by intensity. Loud voices, dramatic emotions, and urgent energy often feel like authority, insight, or authenticity. They mistake force for knowledge, heat for clarity, and volume for validity. You don't. You recognize that intensity is not evidence, and drama rarely contains truth. That discernment is a rare form of protection because it keeps you from being swayed, manipulated, or misled by appearances or emotional theatrics. This ability doesn't make you detached or disinterested. You engage, you feel, and you respond. But your response is filtered through understanding rather than impulse. Where others react to volume or spectacle, you observe, evaluate, and act from a grounded perspective. You can witness chaos without absorbing it, listen to arguments without surrendering your judgment, and watch power plays without being pulled into them. That creates an internal immunity to manipulation that most people lack. The protection this provides is subtle but profound. People who rely on intimidation, emotional extremes, or over-the-top expressions to gain control or influence will find you difficult to move. There is nothing for them to exploit because your perception is rooted in observation, logic, and discernment rather than reaction. You don't need to fight, argue, or defend yourself. The lack of response to intensity is enough to neutralize attempts at dominance. This clarity also allows you to operate with a rare kind of efficiency. You don't waste energy chasing illusions of power or truth that are wrapped in dramatics. You conserve your attention, your focus, and your emotional bandwidth for what actually matters. In a world where most people are constantly reacting to the loudest signals, your ability to see through noise becomes a fortress. By not confusing intensity with truth, you remain anchored, clear, and self-directed. You are able to engage with the world without being hijacked by it. That discernment is not learned from books or advice. It is cultivated through experience, observation, and the refusal to be swept away by spectacle. It is a quiet, unshakable form of protection that keeps your energy, your mind, and your soul intact. Number 12, your nervous system recovers instead of imprinting trauma. Most people carry their experiences like permanent marks, long after the events themselves have ended. Small betrayals, harsh words, sudden shocks, they leave traces that influence every thought, decision, and relationship. For many, trauma becomes a blueprint, shaping behavior and limiting freedom. You are different. When life strikes, your nervous system processes it, learns from it, and then releases it. Trauma doesn't lodge itself in you and dictate your reality. You absorb lessons without carrying unnecessary weight, and that creates a level of protection few ever achieve. This ability doesn't come from luck or avoidance. It comes from a nervous system trained to integrate experience without allowing it to hijack your identity. Pain, conflict, and chaos pass through you, and while you feel them fully, they don't become permanent fixtures of who you are. That means you can face challenges, loss, and betrayal without letting them erode your inner stability. Most people are trapped in cycles of rumination or fear because their system records trauma like a permanent scar. You don't. Your system is resilient, adaptive, and restorative. Because of this, you operate from a place of continuity and clarity. You can make decisions without being bound by past injuries. You can engage with people without projection or defense that comes from unresolved pain. Situations that might overwhelm others barely shift your equilibrium. This isn't emotional detachment. It's mastery over how experience influences you. It is the difference between being reactive and being sovereign in your responses. This form of protection is subtle but formidable. It means that no external event, betrayal, or shock has the power to permanently destabilize you. You recover faster, integrate more completely, and move forward with lessons intact rather than wounds festering. While others are tethered to the past, you are free to operate in the present. Your nervous system's ability to recover instead of imprinting trauma ensures that you remain intact, self-directed, and unshakable. It is an internal armor built not from avoidance, but from the disciplined resilience of someone who has learned that what passes through does not have to stay. That is true protection in its deepest form. Number 13. You are not driven by revenge or redemption. Most people carry invisible chains forged from past injuries. They dwell on slights, betrayals, and wrongs, allowing them to dictate actions, emotions, and decisions long after the events have passed. Revenge and redemption can consume a person, shaping their identity and directing energy towards satisfying old scores or proving worth. You operate differently. You are not motivated by settling accounts or rewriting history. That lack of attachment to past grievances is one of the most subtle yet powerful forms of protection a person can have. Choosing not to be driven by revenge or redemption doesn't mean you are passive or indifferent. You feel deeply, you process fully, and you act when necessary. But your actions are not dictated by the past. You don't let someone else's mistakes or cruelty become the compass for your life. That detachment keeps you from being manipulated, from reacting impulsively, and from giving external events control over your internal state. Most people are trapped in cycles of retaliation or proving themselves, and those cycles sap energy and weaken resilience. You bypass that entirely. This perspective also grants you clarity and freedom. Without the need to balance accounts or seek external justice, you can focus entirely on what moves your life forward. You invest your energy in growth, understanding, and creation rather than in cycles of resentment or atonement. That makes you quietly formidable because your decisions are not predictable, reactive, or emotionally charged. They are deliberate, grounded, and self-directed. Being free from the need for revenge or redemption also prevents emotional residue from accumulating. You do not carry grudges, imagined debts, or unfulfilled expectations as part of your identity. That creates a kind of immunity against toxicity, manipulation, and interference, because there are no unresolved hooks for others to exploit. Ultimately, not being driven by revenge or redemption ensures that your energy remains yours. You are not tethered to the past, and your actions are born from presence, intention, and integrity rather than reaction. That freedom, clarity, and self-possession form a protection that is subtle, deep, and nearly impossible to breach. It is a quiet power that keeps your soul intact, unshaken, and sovereign. Number 14. Your life is guided by internal permission, not external signs. Most people live tethered to external validation. They wait for approval, recognition, or confirmation before acting. They look for signs, omens, or endorsements from others to move forward, as if their authority and worth must be granted externally. You do not. Your life operates from internal permission. You decide, act, and move based on your own discernment, values, and timing, not because someone else nodded or a situation aligned perfectly. That independence is one of the most profound forms of protection imaginable. Living by internal permission doesn't mean ignoring reality or rejecting feedback. It means that no external force has the power to dictate your pace, your choices, or your energy. You don't need to wait for someone to approve your presence, validate your ideas, or sanction your actions. That autonomy keeps you unshakable because you are the arbiter of your own life. People who rely on external signs are constantly at the mercy of others' perceptions, moods, or whims. You bypass that entirely. This principle also ensures clarity in decision-making. When your guidance comes from within, your actions are consistent, aligned, and grounded. You move through chaos, pressure, and complexity without being derailed by conflicting opinions or misleading cues. That clarity makes your presence stable, your energy undisturbed, and your direction almost impervious to interference. People around you may scramble, second-guess, or debate endlessly, but you remain unshaken because your authority is internal, not borrowed. Living this way also cultivates a subtle magnetism. Others sense that your choices come from a place of certainty, not insecurity. That certainty creates natural boundaries because your energy is not available for manipulation, persuasion, or control. No matter the intensity of outside influence, you remain centered. Ultimately, being guided by internal permission is the ultimate protection. It frees your energy, preserves your integrity, and ensures your autonomy. You do not move because the world tells you to. You move because you have granted yourself the right to exist fully, act decisively, and navigate life on your own terms. That internal sovereignty is invisible but impenetrable, a quiet yet absolute shield that keeps your soul intact and unshakable. When you look closely at the soul that carries unshakable protection, what you see is not a series of dramatic powers or flashy abilities. You see a structure built from discipline, awareness, and quiet mastery over life itself. This is a soul that consolidates its energy, sets boundaries before hope is needed, and resists attachment to manipulation or drama. It metabolizes pressure instead of being crushed by it, carries ancestral resolve instead of fear, and withstands the emptiness that confounds so many. Its identity remains intact, grounded, and self-directed, unaffected by misunderstanding, intensity, or the chaos of others. It disengages before decay can touch it, does not chase revenge or redemption, and navigates life by internal authority rather than external signs. All of these traits combine to create something extraordinary, a life lived from sovereignty, clarity, and resilience. Protection in this sense isn't a shield that blocks. It's a form of alignment that leaves no opening for disruption, manipulation, or chaos. It's quiet, invisible, and yet impossible to penetrate. Those who encounter this energy feel it immediately, even if they cannot define it. It's not a gift bestowed. It's a consequence of a soul that has learned, through experience and deliberate awareness, how to remain intact, unshaken, and free. If this message resonated with you and opened your eyes to the subtle, powerful ways a soul can be protected, make sure you stay connected. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives that reveal the hidden layers of human strength. Don't forget to like this video if it spoke to you. Comment your thoughts below to share your perspective, and share it with others who need to understand the quiet power of unshakable protection. Your awareness matters, and together we can explore what it truly means to live untouchable. Stay blessed always.